So, as you mentioned, Rob, there are so many parallels between the performing arts as well
Yeah.
as leadership. So, what are some of the biggest leadership lessons that you learned as a street performer?
So when I went into theater, I wasn't just going to be dabbling, and I dove into it fully, and I wanted to do it well. And so I went to the school up in Maine for performers and theater professionals, and I met a group of very like-minded individuals. I remember I was in the Red Barn, which is where we held the classes, and I was up against one of these of the wall, and I had these three juggling clubs. They call them Indian clubs. They were homemade. They were really crude. They were heavy. And I'm practicing. I'm really like working at it really hard. And the teacher came in. He started to walk past me. And then he paused. He turned and he said, "Salafia, you just don't look like a juggler." And then he walked away. And I was in shock. I was like going, what? But all of a sudden his words, not all of a sudden, after a while, his words started to have deeper meaning. If you think of circus performers, their whole body language, their energy screams performer and screams confidence. Mine didn't, at least not yet. And that's what one of the things that I worked on was, and what I work on with leaders is, how do you show up, your energy that you show up, your physical presence, your vocal presence. All of these things send the messages, and that's how people experience us. They experience us energetically, physically, vocally, emotionally. They all send messages. And sometimes we send messages without even saying a word. That's your physical presence, your energetic presence. If you think about your role, are you filling that with the energy and the physical vitality that sends the message that you're confident? You say, like, how do you walk into the boardroom? Do you walk into the boardroom the same way that you would engage someone, a direct report in a coaching conversation? Those are the things that I help people understand.
I love that story. As you said, the presence and how you come across to people is so important. And everyone talks about executive presence. It's something that a lot of people say leaders need, but it's so hard to describe it. And I'm curious, how you would differentiate presence from executive presence.
So presence, as I describe it, is when you show up and have access to all those different parts of yourself. You bring everything with you. In other words, no experience in your life is wasted. It has both an inner dimension of self-awareness and an external dimension of self-awareness. The internal dimension is how aware you are of your values, your motivations, internal or external motivations, just all the things that make you who you are on the inside, your personal story and your journey. Externally, it's how people experience you, the impact that you have on others. And looking at that, executive presence is how you show up and the impact that you have on the people and the environment within which you operate. So there are many different types of environments and different cultures. And how do you adapt in those cultures? How do you work with teams? How do you work communicating up to senior leaders? How do you blend in with peers? Both of these have a sense of belonging. Some people, they're really friendly and very expressive when they go in, when you talk to them over dinner or in a casual situation. When they go into work, all of a sudden they hang up their personality at the door and they go in, and then everything gets flat. The voice gets flat, the facial expressiveness gets flat affect. Where did that person go? These are the expectations that we put on ourselves. We begin to act in the way we think we should act, as opposed to bringing our full self into these positions of leadership.
So in the best case scenario, you would feel confident to be who you are and not have to sort of wear these costumes or these masks that we put on.
Yes. And at the same time, like when I was a street performer, I would look at these seasoned performers. They'd have 300 people around them, and they were able to hold, the attention of the audience for, a long time. And I would try it. I would get 17 people around me, and then like the wind, they'd be gone. And I'm like, how do they do it? So the best performers do something that's unique about them, how they show up. They also have a certain look. I wanted to be sharp. I was a tap dancer, right? I did things in a certain way. I had a short-cut tuxedo. I had a top hat because I was a top hat juggler. So I wanted to make sure that I was sending the right signals, even if people just looked at me, they would go, oh, I got it. Then how do I fill that costume out? Then I fill that costume out with energy and vitality. Person. I remember that this one early career person I worked with, and it was all about being authentic and being his gritty self. And that's what authenticity meant. But when he came to work, it was like, yeah, he just rolled out of bed. It's like, that's not authenticity. The authenticity are the values that you have inside of yourself, the stories that make you who you are. And when you're close to that, but then when you walk in, executive presence is you have to understand the environment within which you operate, who your customers are, who do you relate to, and send the right signals. It doesn't mean you have to be corporate look-alike to everyone else. You can still have your own personality, but you have to bring your game. So I think there is a difference there. Right. I don't really focus in on that too much on executive presence. I focus in on the inner world and understanding your story, then being able to be articulate and tailoring your messages according to the audience that you're going to be engaging with. Become really aware of the messages that you send without saying a word.
And that brings me to, that chapter in your book, Walking the Tightrope, because that's all about, how do you find that balance between who you are, authentically, your values, and then match it to the audience and what the audience is expecting of you. And this often comes into play when you look at women in leadership roles. And they're facing that double bind.
Right. So there's a couple of ways to talk about this. Let's talk about that first. I have had the pleasure and honor to work with some really great women leaders and help them in this area. Now, you understand theater. The skills of theater apply to both men, women, or, it's like however you identify yourself. And it's about being able to get to the point where you're neutral enough about yourself that you can then look at a character and sort of embrace that character and bring that other character to life, to bring kind of a genuineness and an authenticity to playing that character, whatever that is. So there's a skill set that everyone learns. That's a neutral skill set. Then we apply it depending upon who we are as individuals, as people, given our experience and the role that's in front of us. For women leaders, it's somewhat similar, but this one woman said to me the way she experiences this is what she aspires to is this sense of confidence and approachability. And I think that's the double-edged sword you're talking about. It's not confidence and arrogance. Arrogance is when you put yourself above someone else. When you try and, you puff yourself up and it's not about being something other than you are. For a woman to enter into a male-dominated environment that can be extremely harsh, they have to play a harsh game. I've seen very successful women not give up who they are. The image I like to use is a ballet dancer, where the ballet dancer has an amazing amount of power, structure, incredible discipline. But then, in terms of making them grounded, it's an incredibly difficult art form. But on top, they make it look effortless and graceful. That is an art in and of itself. So that's that sense of approachability. You have to make yourself approachable to others, but you also have to have this discipline and practice inside of you that you know how to make decisions. And you can do it in whichever way is authentic to you. So that other thing of being approachable does not have to be weakness. That's why I like to look into the arts, because the arts have great model. All these many different arts have great models that we can look into to see how we can make ourselves up to be, like what are the component pieces to being an authentic leader?
Yeah, that's so true. When you think about the best artists, they're often the ones who are great performers, but they do it so effortlessly, as you said. So it seems almost natural. And then you're buying into everything that they're doing, right? Like you almost feel like a part of them.
Well, they suspend judgment. They create an atmosphere where you buy into it. And great leaders are great storytellers. They can bring a vision and strategy to life, and they allow you to see yourself inside of that. So they make your efforts valuable and meaningful. That's great leadership, as opposed to just telling people what to do like pawns. I'm starting to do some thinking about this, the great people leaving their jobs.
The Great Resignation.
The Great Resignation.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it I mean, there's a lot of has to do with the pandemic, but I think what the pandemic did is only brought to the surface issues that were already there, issues of disconnection, of dissatisfaction, disengagement. It has to do with a sense of belonging. I think it's a lack of leadership, quite frankly. Leaders, can they create an environment that allows people and ideas to thrive?